Very good. Mhm. 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 Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're in part 2 of the book, and it covers, this is pretty much an outline of what we're going to be looking at for the next 6 lessons. So today we're going to be on lesson number 9, and this is dealing with the future tense. So last week we dealt with the past tense, and the weeks before, all the way up to lesson number 8, were all past tense. So now we're going to be dealing with the future tense, and how things are going to work within that framework. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 are all going to be future tense. So 6 lessons in that. So what they're really telling us here is, like in the first part of the book, they went over the different forms that we have. We have 7 forms. So, and then they're going to list these forms down right here. Okay. Basically, what the form is generally, the active and the passive, right? And in each one of these categories, group number 1, 2, 3, and 4 consist of active and passive actions. That which is being done active by the person, and that which is receiving the action, which is the passive. And so, they give you those modifying or identifying signs, which is what they would call the marks or the nakud. There's a lot of different names that are being used for these marks. Sometimes they're called diacritical. Sometimes they're called nakud. Sometimes they're called vowel marks. And let you know how something is supposed to be understood, whether it is a simple way, whether it's a forceful way, whether it's causative, active or passive. And then, of course, on oneself, which I think I've expressed to you, this hith pael, and when you see this, it lets you know that that's what it is. And so these identifying signs, pretty much when you look at the Hebrew, will let you know the indicators, to let you know how something is supposed to be understood, or how the actual verb is, what I would say, function, or I'm going to say verbal. No, is letting you know the verbal stem. Okay. Is letting you know the stem, what kind of stem it is. When we continue our learning, I want to introduce you to not only verbal stems, which that's what we're doing right now, which are 7 of those things. Okay. These 7 right here. But I want to introduce you to what they call a verbal function. This book doesn't go over the function of the verbs. It just tells you what type of stems they are. They give you a little bit of information like, oh yeah, it might be a simple action or forceful action, but that's not the function. It's not the function of the verb. So that's a whole nother layer that I'm going to be sharing with you that's not found in this book. So you can pretty much understand, just to give you a little bit of insight, you have 7 different verbal stems. Okay, you have 7 of those. The verbal functions, there are 8 of them. Okay, there are 8 functions. So any one of these 7 can be functioned in 8 different ways. So that's where I always tell you, well, you got 56 different ways that something can be done. Okay, and then you multiply that by, the people and the persons and so forth and so on. Okay. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, but at any rate, this lesson is just kind of giving us an overview of what we've already learned. So those are the groups that we have, and those groups are pretty much what we're going to be continuing with. So one of the things they say here is that, Rita says, now you can also see from the table that the identifying sign of the past tense verb is always found in the first letter that you come to when you're reading the verb. Okay, it's always the first letter of the verb that you're reading. Okay, so in here it would be the first 3 letters here are the actual root, and the identifying sign is always under the first letter. Okay, like here, that's the first letter of the verb. Here, these 3 dots are the first letter. Okay, and then of course when you add letters like the noon and these letters here or this one, then that's different than these dots and stuff like that. Okay. So what you see is that you have actual symbols little identifying signs, but you also have letters, okay, that are added to the actual root in order to let you know what we're talking about. And you have to keep your eyes open because sometimes the noon that is used here can express a simple action that's done passively, okay? But also too, by it being added, which we're going to go over today, will tell you that it's a little bit differently, okay? So it's a little different. It tells you more of a person, okay, or the people. Any questions on this? Well, let me teach you something that you don't know. All right. In our example here that we have, in the future tense, basically, because I'm going to send this over to you, I don't think I have to read it all, but what I want you to understand is that when you're doing a future tense type of verb, right, all you're going to be doing is you're going to add what they would call a future tense letter. And that's how you know that something is future tense. So the most important part of that I would say of understanding the construction or the way that it's set up is you have to know what the root is in order to know what the letter is, something's being added or something's being subtracted, okay? So now all the letters that we've learned about were past tense, like the T on the end, or the ta, that had on the end, or this one here was also two that you would see on the end, or it would be the oo on the end, or it would be the o on the end. Okay, so all that was in the past. Now we're dealing with the future tense. So what we're going to be doing now is adding letters to the front of the root. So if you have a 3-letter root, and depending on whatever the letter is, it doesn't matter. The one that we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding to the front. So that could be the aleph, or it could be, as you see here, the tav, it could be the yod, and it could be the noon. As I mentioned to you, sometimes there's some confusion because this looks identical to the group number 1, noon, that's added to the front to make sure that it's a passive past tense verb. But here you see that they can add the noon, and the noon means we. So these are the things that you have to be able to identify and watch out for. I'm pretty sure they're going to let us know how you can identify that. And I think too, is like when it is a past tense, and they have the noon, and I'll just go back to this right here. When it is a past tense and there's a noon in front of it, like this one right here, the way that you would be able to identify that it's a past tense versus a future tense is simply by the letters that are added to the end of it. That's the clue. It tells you, oh, that's past tense. Okay. So you might see the noon on the front and you automatically, oh, that means we. But if you see this right here, then you know it's past tense. The noon on the front is going to be a future tense. Okay. So our study primarily today and for the rest of the next 6 lessons are going to be future tense. So there are your examples right there. Anyone have any questions?
No.
Okay, good. I don't really want you to worry about like you're gonna see some different dots, like you're gonna see these with 3 dots, underneath like that, and you'll be like, well, what's the difference between that and then every other one of these has a little dot one by themselves? What does that mean? Well, there's a grammatical explanation that they don't give here in this book that tells you why these are the 3 dots. They're not going to tell us what that is. This is a grammatical understanding that we will get in a later teaching. So for what I want you just to understand, without getting into what these dots here mean under this, it's just kind of focus on what the letters mean. So if a letter is added to the front, then you know that it's a future tense. And that future tense, when we talk about future, it always means I will, right? You will, or she will, or they will. So the tav that's added to the front, it could be you, second person, it could be she, right? Third person, or it could be they, with another letter at the end. So there's a combination that you'll be able to see and identify. It's like, oh, okay, so these are just different pieces to my puzzle. The yo means he will, right? And the noon, of course, is we will. They decided, I don't know why, but that's the letter that they chose. Okay. And of course, you know that each one of these letters have a agricultural meaning. And if I see anything that would help us better recognize or understand it better, then I would point that out to us. But for now, just think about the letters and what the shapes are and how they're being used. Okay. It says all these words have the letter added onto the front of the root, shavar. Okay. Because they are all in the future tense. I want to point out too that I've always made mention of the bet. Like this is a bet right here, but it doesn't have the dot in it, right? So sometimes you're going to see words that have the dot in it, like for the bet, for the B sound. And then other times you're going to see it without the dot. And the question that someone would ask is like, well, why is the dot in there in one place and then it's not there in the second place, right? And what is this dot? Well, this dot, again, is another grammatical tool that's supposed to tell you how this bet is functioning, which is, of course, a whole nother layer. I want to give you the most simple explanation as I can. Anytime the bet letter, okay, is used in the beginning of a word, it's going to have the dot in it, unless, okay, there's a rule, unless it's preceded by a vowel. If the last letter of the last word was a vowel. So for example, we got the word Torah, right? Just say we got Torah. Okay. And then you have the word what word can I use for a bet? Oh. We got the word bayith, okay? So this letter right here is a vowel, right? A lot of times you think it's a regular consonant, but it's not. That dot that's inside of this bet will not be there. It'll be called a vath versus or a vayith versus bayit. Okay. If it's a first letter inside of a word like what word can I say? Bakar, then it'll be a dot in it. If it is a second letter, then it won't have a dot in it. Okay. So if the bet is in first position, it's going to have a dot in it. If it's in a second or even a third position, it won't have a dot in it. Unless, of course, there's some other grammatical rule that goes along with that. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Because there's two bets. There's the one with the dot and there's the one without the dot. Okay. They still have the same meaning. However, the one without the dot, what sound does it make?
The. Oh.
It has the V.
Yeah.
This one right here has the B sound. Okay. Okay. Just a little information. And of course, if you forget, don't worry about it. But I want to bring that out since I see this word right here that doesn't have it in there. But you say, well, up here, I see it has a dot in it. Well, that's because of some grammatical rules. That's the reason why you see it there. Okay. But by itself, without anything being added to it, this is what it's going to look like. This is its normal way of looking. Okay. When you add letters to it, these little diacritical marks here, it'll change. But I don't want you to get confused. But if it has a dot inside of it, what sound should you make?
B.
Thank you. It's the B. If it doesn't have the dot in it, what sound should you make?
V.
Thank you. And that's what it is. Okay. So as such, when we come back to our rule, because there's a rules to the Hebrew language above that identify the group of a future verb tense, all you have to do is look at the vowel under the first letter and you will you'll come to it when you're reading the verb. It is clear now that this letter is always going to be the added future tense letter. Okay. So what they're saying here is that you might have a root like these three letters right here. Okay. But the additional letters that are added to the front of it are in the future tense are always going to be these four letters. They're always going to be that. So if I say I, am I talking first person, second person, and third person?
First.
First.
If I say you right here, is that second person? Yes. If I say she, is that second or third person?
Second.
Still second. Or third.
Third. She and he go together. Okay. This is a third. This is like an exception to the rule. That's why they got it up there, because you see a tav and you say, okay, that means you, but it can also mean she. And how would you know the difference? You would know the difference by the context of the sentence, the structure. It'll let you know. You know, if another word in there had some on the end of it, like, oh, it's talking about a female, it's talking about her versus you. Okay. The you by itself here that they have up here is masculine. Okay. It's masculine. This right here, they're saying we use it both for the second person and we'll use the ta for the third person. We'll use both of them. Okay. We'll use it for you and we'll use it for she. And that's just the rule that they have. And also too, we'll use it for they. That's the third person plural. So that might get a little confusing to us, but once you start seeing it, you'll get used to it. Okay. The yod right here is the third person. Okay. And that's singular. It can also be used for they. But what I don't like about what they're showing you here is they're not really telling you that the she right here that they would use right here for the tav, they're not showing you that it's not just a tav by itself. It would have this at the end, a yod. It'd be that combination. It'd be a tav and a yod. And then they would have the root in here like this. If it's talking about they, it's a third person plural. It would have a yod. Okay. Because you're like, well, how could a yod be for he and they at the same time? Right. But they're not telling you, which I don't like, that they're not saying like, okay, you would have the yod, then you have the root right here in this box. And then on the end of this, you would have the u. So those are the combinations that you have to get used to. You'd have to say, well, this is the root. And then here is a future tense added letter. And here it is on the end. So that can be a little confusing because you're saying, well, you added something to the end of the root. And I know if it's on the end, then it's in the past tense. The rule is if there's something in front of this root, it's future tense. No matter what's on the end of it, it's still future tense. And I'll show you some examples of what I'm saying. Here, this tav right here, this one right here, it'll be a tav, the root, and then the yod right here on the end. And that'll let you know that that's feminine. Okay. If it was just a tav by itself, it just means you. Okay. And that you right there could be masculine or it could be feminine. Okay. Because the femininity that they're talking about with she right here is both a tav and a yod. And it's talking about a third person. And I'll show you some examples because I don't want to confuse you if I haven't already done so. Okay. Now, what they're trying to get us to understand is this, is you'll know what these letters are. There's four of them, okay, that I showed you, which is the aleph, the tav, the yod, and the nun. So they said, now that you know this, by you looking at the vowel that's under the letter, you will be able to tell immediately which group it's in, okay? And they're going to be a little tricky right here. What they're really going to tell you is this. And without me going on and then playing a game, I'm just going to show it to you. Okay. They're saying that you'll know what group something is in by them adding a certain amount of dots to it. Okay. So for example, in our past tense, we had 4 groups, group 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. That was in our past tense, but also too in our future tense, you still have groups 1, 2, 3, and 4. You still have 4 groups that you're dealing with. Okay. On the future tense. So nothing is really changed except for you adding a letter to the front of the verb. Okay. So they're not telling you what those identifying signs are because you don't know. But if I took this out right here and I put past tense in it, right? And I got rid of these letters right here. And it's just the vowels right there. What would be the identifying sign for the first simple? What would it look like from what you can remember?
The
Yo.
It'd be this. It'd be that
yeah,
sign.
awesome.
Yep, and it'd be under the first letter. If it was the passive, it would be a noon for this, and that's in group number 1. Okay, so you're going to get both the charts. So what I want you to do is compare the charts. So you can see like, oh, okay, I see that they're just still using the same root, but now all they've done is just added this letter, and here they're not telling you, they didn't add the aleph here and all that in their table. They're just using the yod for all these examples. Okay. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're going to share an idea with you. So they don't want to confuse you by putting an aleph on the front. And then the next one, they're going to put a tav, and the next one, they're going to put a noon, and the next one, they're going to put another tav and a yod. They're not going to do that because they want to get you to understand how you can identify what would be the identifying signs. Okay. Because this is what we're after. We're after what are the signs, the things that will communicate to you and tell you what something is. So if I put up this as an identifying sign, you would say that this is a simple action. If I put up this dot right here, you would know that you should know that that is an identifying sign. And what would that be? What group would that be? If it's the I sound, what group would that be?
2.
Yeah, it'd be group number 2. Exactly. Then you got the 3 dots. Or I think I got them in the wrong direction. You'd have the 3 dots underneath there. And then here, it would have a hey with 1 dot and a hey with 2 dots and a hey with 3 dots. And then down here on the bottom, it'd be, instead of it being the yod and the tav, it'd be the hey and the tav. It'd be a hith on the bottom. Okay. So it's just putting your pieces together and knowing what the identifying signs are. What they're going to tell you here is that they want to keep it as simple as possible. So they ask you a question, which is, now that you notice that that I have not put any dots in the table yet, meaning you don't have any identifying signs, you know if it's 1 dot, 2 dots, 3, you don't even know what it is. He says everything else is there in a group number. The type of action is in a group number, the active and passive is in a group number. So, however, there's no dots. And then he asked, well, why did I do this? The reason why he did this was simply because the answer, he wants you to tell him what you think the answer would be. So he's asking a question, how many dots do you think will be under group number 1?
One.
Yes. How many dots do you think will be under group number 2?
2.
Thank you. Number 3?
3.
3. Good. You understand? So this is the idea. And I think I like the way that they set it up, of course. And so I'm going to show you what it looks like. So in future tense, what they're talking about is identifying signs, because you already know the root, you know what the letter is, and here is what you have. So the answer is astonishing the way that they set it up, which is pretty smart, actually. It says the number of dots is the same as the number of the group for the future tense. So when they added a yod, and they did this for just demonstration purposes only, it's not the only letter that can be added. It could be the aleph, it could be the yod, it could be the tav, for both, you or she. It could be the noon. Those are the 4 letters that could be added. And those are all future tense. Okay. So the identifying sign is what you're after now. Because just like the past tense, they would put the dots or whatever underneath the first letter of the verb. Here, they're going to put it under the first letter of the added letter. They're not going to put it under the verb. They're going to put it under the added letter. So in essence, you can see an aleph that has 1 dot, or you can see a yod with 2 dots. You can see a tav that you added as a letter with 3 dots. You can see a noon with 1 dot. Okay. That's how it's done. All right. So the question is, and all I'm going to see is if you're following me, if I have the aleph and it has 1 dot underneath it, right? Just on this alone, just by seeing this, and you know that it's a future tense because it's added to the front of the root. Okay. What do you know from this by itself? What should you understand?
It's simple.
Thank you. It's group number 1. It's a simple. And what does the aleph represent? I. Perfect. That's it. So I will. Okay. It's not just I want to correct because I used to do that. It's just not I, it's I will because it's future. So I will. So when you see this, that combination of an aleph and a dot right there on front of any root, then you would know that I will what? I have done this in a very simple way. So here's your test. Just that alone.
I will hear.
Very
Second.
close.
I
Shamar,
will guard.
I will guard.
Guard,
Perfectly. I will guard. Yes. Here you go. It's still I will, but now it's a forceful guard. So how would you guard forcefully? See, that's the thing. Our minds don't think like that. That's where we're developing.
I will protect.
I will protect. Excellent. So it's very forceful, right? Then if you got the 3 dots, what does that mean? It's group number 3, and group number 3 is what? Will what? I will cause to be guarded. Okay. So several different ways that you can do things. Okay. So that's good. That's our word Shema. Okay.
I will hear. I will listen.
Yes. Excellent. How do you say that?
Yes.
Thank you. That's it. This is serving as a Y. This is a SH. And there it is. And that's the vowel right there, that dot. Yeesh. Okay. You see that? And that's in the future tense. Okay. That's the future tense. Now watch this. I just put a new N on there. It's past tense. What did I just say?
Um, that's tough.
It's
He
past.
will, he heard,
The T on the end is what?
shoot, you,
I.
Shamati, I.
that's I.
Okay, did I, because that's that tav and that yod. Okay, I. Past tense did something. What did I do?
Heard,
Yes, in Shema. And did I do it in a simple way or did I do it in a passive? Did I do it in a forceful way?
Simple.
simple,
It's wrong. That's wrong. Tell me why you're wrong. I'm glad I'm doing this right now. I wish somebody would have did this to me when I was learning. Don't think I don't love you
oh,
because I'm
that
abusing.
was forceful.
Yes, it's forceful. Why? Because it's under the first letter of the root.
Second, okay.
Yes. So if you have yish, the dot that's under the yod here is different than the dot that's under the root. You got to shift your mind. You got to know the difference between a future tense and a past tense. Okay? Because something is added to the front of this word, it has a dot underneath it. I'm in group number 1. Okay? And that means he, right? He simply did something because I'm in group number 1. If it's under the root of the word, which would be right here, right? And this wasn't here, then I would know if it's a dot, it's forceful and part of group number 2. And let me show it to you. Because I wish that someone would have told me this. It made it very difficult for me because I didn't understand. I'm like, well, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. Here you go. So going back to Shabarti, that dot right there is under the first letter of the root, the 3-letter root. And that dot right there is an identifying sign to a group number 2, forceful action actively. So what you got to know is your pieces. When you do have your pieces, they'll have some of the same pieces, but they'll function differently. Kind of like in the past tense, you have the noon on the front end, it means passive. But when I turn to the future and use the noon, it means we will. See? So you can have the same pieces, but depends on where they are, according to the root. So if the pieces are the same, but they're in different locations, that determines how it's supposed to be understood. So this dot right here under a past tense, okay, so make your comparison. The dot underneath that tells you that that's a past tense, okay? There's no letter that's added to the front except for when we're talking about causative or we're talking about reflexive. And that's where you can get kind of hung up on. Because you got to know what these are. And so, you know, those identifying signs, you're like, okay, I know what this is. I know what that looks like. I remember that. Oh, that's a noon. Yeah, but does it have anything on the end? Yep, it does. Okay, so it's past tense. Okay, so this noon right here is not we, because how could we be we here in the front and also I on the back? Don't make any sense, because the T, the tav and the yod right here, that's pointing right here, means I in the past tense. Okay, this is I as well in the past tense. This is I in the past tense, I in the past tense. Okay, so you can't have a piece of like a noon on the front and it means the same thing. It means we broke I. That doesn't make sense. Or I broke we, you know, or I forcefully, I smashed we, you know what I'm saying? So you can't do that. All right. So I'm bringing this out because I want you to understand that there's a difference between that dot that's in the past tense and the dot that's in the future tense, because I'm in 2 different tenses now. Okay. So my tenses now are different. My tenses are now, they didn't give us any of the signs here because they're like, okay, I want you to think. So then you're gonna go over here and they tell you what those signs are, what those marks are, those little dots. Those dots are gonna tell you what group you're in, all right? So we got this root here, shabar. That's in group number 2. That's a forceful action. So if I'm forcing, so what is this saying right here? Shabar means to break by itself. If I'm in group number 2, if I'm gonna break something, how am I gonna do it? In a very,
Smash.
I'm gonna smash it, I'm gonna break it in a very forceful way. So the quickest way for me to understand that I'm in a forceful way is by me remembering that the 2 dots represent group number 2. And I know group number 2 is forceful. I know group number 1 is simple. Okay. So you got to remember your groups. And this is the way they design this book, which I like. It makes it really easy. Okay. So this is forceful on future tense. This is simple. So group 1, 1 dot, group number 1, group 2 dots, group number 2, 3 dots. You may ask yourself, I don't see 3 dots in the active form here. I don't see 3 dots with number 5. I don't see it. Well, this there. What it's going to look like is just a regular pathak, like a line like this. But what it really is 3 little dots that are put together. You got to imagine them being smashed together. So they took 3 dots and they put them together. And that's how you end up getting this line right here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. And then these 3 dots, of course, is going this way to let you know that that's passive. So based on this in particular little group numbering here, I have asked you a question. You know this is group number, this is simple, okay? But number 1, is this active or passive?
In future.
Well, we know it's future, but I want to see, am I doing the action or is someone else doing it? Because remember, each one of our groups has both an active way to do it and they have a passive way to do it, okay? So just like in the past tense, there was an active passive in group number 1. Group number 2, they had an active passive. Group number 3, they had an active passive. Group number 4, it was both active and passive. So in each one of these groups that you have here, you're going to have those same types of actions.
Okay.
So when I ask you which is active, it's always going to be the first one. The second one is going to be passive. Just like in the past tense, the future tense has the same type of setup. The only thing is they're adding a letter to the front of the root and they're giving these dots to let you know which group you're in. That tells you whether it's simple, forceful, or causative. So number 4, is it active or passive?
Passive.
Passive. Perfect. Number 5, active or passive?
Active.
Thank you. And that's just the way it is. Don't question it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because how many groups do we, how many verb stems do we have in the passive and in the active? How many verb stems did they introduce us to? There you go. You said it. How many? 7. So I'll say it together. There are 7 verb stems that we have. We have group number 1 that contains 2 of them. We have group number 2 that contains two more. We have group number 3 that has 2 more. And then number 7 by itself only has both active and passive. But there's 7 of them, okay? So simple, forceful, causative, and on oneself, which is called the hithpael, a reflexive, okay? Because you're doing the action upon oneself. Group number 1 consists of both active and what?
Passive.
Group number 2 consists of both active and
Passive.
group number 3 has passive and
Active.
thank you. And group number 4 consists of both
Active and passive.
and passive. You guys are awesome. Okay. So now we're dealing with, are we dealing right now today with future or past tense?
Future.
We're dealing in the future. And when we're dealing with future, where does that letter supposed to be? On the front or the end of the root?
Right.
On the front, because we're on the front of it. If we're on the front of something, that means we're in the beginning of it, meaning that it is the future. Remember, the front means the future, and the future means the will. So the will of someone, I desire to do the action, or I want the action to happen in the future. I can do the action. You, she, or they can do the action. He can do the action, or we can do the action. You understand? So it could be I, first person. It could be you, second person. It could be they, or he, or she, third person. And if it's a first person common, it can be we do the action. Okay? So that's what it is. And once you learn those things, you'll be like, oh, I get it. And what also too, you would recognize that the 3 dots tell I'm in group number 3. So this is passive, and I know that it's causative. These are, it's going to show you here, it shows you the 3 dots, but really it's just going to be like a line, like a pathak. It's just going to be a line. And you have to imagine that there's 3 dots in there that came together. Okay. Any questions? It's easy. Okay. It's just based on your memory. Okay. So again, if there's 1 dot, it's group number 1. If it's 2 dots, group number 2. 3 dots, it's group number 3. Tav is added to the front of the root as well. That's group number 4. Okay. Easy. So now they say, I'm going to list now a number of verbs in the future tense. I'm not going to translate these verbs fully. We will learn how to do this in the lessons to come. So they're not interested in translating them. All they're interested in doing is letting you know what it looks like, because we're just building upon a foundation. And the foundation is to know, well, how many dots in the future tense. So focus your mind. Don't think about the past anymore. So forget about the past. Right now, what we're dealing with is the future. I mentioned the past to give you your contrast, to let you know what you've learned, and now what you're learning is different. Okay, they have some of the similar letters, they have similar dots, they have similar, framework, right? Similar roots, but once you put something in front, and you have these 3 dots and these different letters, you have to be able to understand what group it is, and that takes memorization. That's all it is memorization. Because what they want you to do from going from this book, when you read a verb or you read something, you'll say, when you see that first dot, you'll be like, man, that's group number 1. You won't be thinking, oh, that's a correct yod, because that's the true name. Okay, so there's names, just to be honest with you, because they don't share it here, but I'll share it so you won't get confused. I do like some of the stuff they do, and then other things I don't. So, but I understand why they do it. What happened? This little dot right here, and these 2 dots right here, and this right here, that mark, that stuff, that has actual names. Okay. Kind of like group number 1, right? Is called a qual. Okay. Group number 1 is called a qual. That's the name of the stem. You get into group number 2, it's called a PL. Okay. You go to group number 3, right? It's called the Hifel or Hifil. And then you go group number 4, it's called the Hithpael. So they have different names for each one of these dots. Okay. So I don't want you to think that these dots are just going to be named group number 1, 2, and 3. The only reason why they're group 1, 2, 3, and 4 is because what they're trying to get us to understand is the foundation of what they represent there. They're not telling you their names. The reason why I'm telling you the name is because I don't want you to get confused. So when you see something and it has called a PL, you'd be like, well, what's a PL? Well, PL is 1 dot. Okay. So if a qual is a group number one, that'd be a qual. That would be the symbol. It'll look like this right here. That means simple, but qual means simple. Okay. And then they have other names. And they don't tell you, they tell you the name sometimes, but sometimes they don't, because they don't want you to know. All right. Where I told you, like, somebody tell me what I just wrote up here.
PR.
Yep. Paul. And guess what Paul is? Paul means the work. It means to do. And guess what that is? That's the call stem, which is group number one. That's all it is. Okay. That's the basic meaning of anything, to do the basics. Okay. The moment I put something here, now what is it?
The PR.
The PL. What group is that?
It's 2.
Thank you, because of that forceful dot right there. Because it's under the first root of the letter, correct? First root letter. Because everything stems from the Paul, the work, the beginning, okay? So I went from this, from a PL right there, that's forceful. Now I'm gonna use that same root. And I'm gonna put underneath it now the 3 dots in this. What's that called?
The profile.
That's the pual. Okay. And the pual is a forceful passive. See? The PL is group number one, but it is forceful. Is it active or passive?
Active.
Active. 3 dots, passive. Okay. So that's in the same group. I put a noon on the front of it, right? And I call it a nifal. Is it active or passive?
Passive.
Passive. You're absolutely right. It's passive. Why is it passive?
It's a noon.
Because the noon told me that it's passive. Okay. It's still a simple action. It's still part of group number one. I do that right there. Is that active or passive?
Active.
Active. Now, what are you doing to me? Why are you trying to do? Why are you doing this to me? Because I want you to see how it works. Okay. Perfect. It's still a paul, which is still a qual, which is still simple. It doesn't change from simple until you add these diacritical marks, these what they would call vowel points. So the moment I add a different vowel point, it just changes the tense or the stem from qual to a either nifal, or from a nifal to a p-all, or from p-all to a pu-all, but it's still the same action of doing work. Now, let me see. Now I'm going to add a letter to the front of this. Now what is it?
A hifil.
Thank you. It's a hifil. Is hifil group number 1, 2, or 3? Well, we know forceful is here. We know simple is group number 1. So that knocks them out. So we got group number 3 is causative. And let's go over here and see. Oh, okay. I got the hey on the, or they put a top here, but because this isn't a forceful, this isn't a future tense. But again, I got that yod there. Oh, okay. All right. I get it. If I want to make it a hithpael, all I'm going to do is add a hey and a tav. And I got a hithpael. And what's a hithpael? What group is that?
4.
Group number 4, which is a reflexive action, me doing the action upon myself. But if you notice, this never changed. Okay? That never changed. It's still a pa'al. It's still work. It's still an action. It's still a verb. Okay? So I want you guys to understand when you look over here, because you're like, why are you adding all this? Won't we just stick to what we're doing? Is because this will help enhance your understanding. When you come into this, you'll be like, oh, I know it now. I know what it is. So when we talk about the pa'al, okay, right? This is the foundation. Now, how many letters is the pa'al?
3.
3. How many letters are part of this root right here?
3.
How many right here?
3.
How about right here?
3.
Okay, so, and all of these are actions. You see? So if I wanted to switch out, if I wanted to understand something, right? The pa'al is going to be your basic root. It's just how it's basic. Like, for example, I got 3 letters right there, and let me clean it up a little bit and show you something, because I think it's important. I know it's important. Do this right quick. All right. So we have the pa'al. And I told you that this means work. And it actually just means verb. Okay. Very basic. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this as my foundation, and I could put any verb underneath in these positions. Okay. Position 1, 2, and 3, 3 letters. The first letter I have is a aleph. The next one I have is a kaf, and the next one I have is lamed. The moment I do that and I put it in 3-letter verb form here, it's in its basic meaning. It's basic. Okay. That's what it means. It means it's basic. It's in its pa'al form. It's in its very basic qal pa'al form. Okay. The moment that I add something to it, okay, because we talk about pa'al, all, okay, that's a pa'al. The moment I take that same vowel points and I stick it underneath here, it's still basic. That's a pa'al. So it doesn't matter if it's an aleph, a kaf, and lamed. It could be a shin. It could be a resh. It could be a hey. For example, let me show you. I could go here and put the shin, the mim, and the resh. As soon as I put it in a pa'al form, it's going to have those markings right here to tell me that it's basic. It means basically to guard. If I want to increase it from a pa'al, I don't want it to be the pa'al anymore from the perspective of being simple. Say I wanted to make it forceful. It's still a pa'al. Well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is this one here is a basic, and I'm identifying that by its mark. The next one is this one. So this is different. It still has the same, root, but I put these marks underneath here now. So now these marks that I put in here is going to change it from a simple to a what? What is that mark? Forceful. That's forceful. Okay. If I turn around and say, well, I want it to be, I want it to be a pool, I will go like this. And that would be still forceful, but now that would be passive. You see? So what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that no matter what the roots can always change. There's literally hundreds of them. Their fundamental understanding is going to be this. Do you understand? So the aleph is taking the place of the P here. The next letter is taking the place of this letter. And then this one, of course, just drops down. Okay, it's a call. Then you got shamar. Okay, and then you got other words. Okay, lavash. Okay. All. Every last one of these things that I have here have the same letters. They just have things that are added to them. That's it. Okay. So the all really truly represents any root word. They chose this word to identify what a basic root is because of its meaning like it means basic, and it means work. It means to do. That's what all it means. That's what all means. And so depending on how you sound it out will change the way that it's done. It's tense, whether it's forceful or whether it's causative or whatever it may be. All right. And so what they're doing is they're showing us that, look, I can add different letters to something. So I'm gonna write something up here and then we'll go from there. That's a pa'al. Okay, I know it doesn't, it's not a pay, it's not a ayin, it's not a lamed. So you don't see it as a pa'al, you see it as a call. Okay, but its form is matching the pa'al. The letters change, but the structure of it hasn't changed. It's still 3 letters. You guys kind of understand what I'm saying? Tell me that I'm not confusing you.
I understand.
Okay, let me know. So we have a call here. If it's in the past, I want to say who's doing the action. I will put whatever piece I want to put on the end to let me know what's in the past. Okay. If I'm interested in it being in the future, I will add a letter to the front of it in order for me to say something that I want to do, I will do, or you will do, or she will do. Okay. If it's something that I would do to myself in the future, okay, then there's a certain piece that would go right in front of it to let you know this. And then in this case, it'd be a yod and I think, is it a yod in the top? Yes, is yith. That'll be on the front of it. All right, so you're going to get these pieces. Hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. So your study for this week is going to be to understand that each one of these groups have a certain amount of dots that go along with it. And that's basically it. So you have to memorize that for the future tense, okay? And of course, they give you the meaning of the word, but they don't go into really breaking it out. What else should I tell you? Okay, so the summary, 1 dot, 2 dots. Okay, very simple. It's super simple. Let's ask some questions. I'm only going to ask you like maybe 2 or 3 questions. So then the first question, it says in the first part of the book, we discussed the past tense. We learned that there are a number of different forms of the Hebrew verb. How many different forms are there? 3, 5, 7, or 9?
7.
Thank you. We learned in question number 2 that to identify which form a Hebrew verb is in the past tense, all we have to do is look at one letter of the verb. Which letter is that? Is it the first letter? Is it the second letter? Is it the third letter? Or is it the fourth? In the past, what letter do you look at to find out the identifying form, right? To identify a form in the past, which letter should you be looking at of that root?
The first.
It's the first letter. Okay. See, one of the things that they don't do that I don't like is they don't tell you like that's the root. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. They just say the verb. The verb is the root. Okay. That's what it is. And the root, its name of the verb is called a pa'al. That's what the root's name is, because that's what a verb is. A verb, praise Yah. A verb, you guys, is called a pa'al. Because a verb is a what? It's an action. And pa'al means to do, or to make, or to work. If you're working and you're doing and you're making something, you have to take an action. That's why it's called a pa'al. So an actual verb is called a pa'al. But they don't tell you that. They just like to keep you confused and just never tell you that a verb is a pa'al. If you would accept that a verb is a pa'al, then you know that this right here is a verb, but it's really a pa'al. and it's a root. Roots are actions. The Hebrew language is a very actionable language. Okay? That's what a root is. A root is an action. How something functions. It has an action. And also too, it tells you how things function. Okay? Like today, we went over a pa'al. The pa'al that we looked at was this word. What is this? How do you say it?
Haya.
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 Haya. And haya means to exist. That's all it means. And that is in action. Okay? That's what it means. It's a pa'al. Somebody give me, I told you a call. I'm wearing that one out.
Shalak.
There you go. Okay. So, shalach. It's ugly cat. Shalach. We would say that that's a root, which is true, but it's also a verb. It's an action. And what does this mean?
To send.
To send, I can send it away simply. And if I did that, this is what the vowel points would be underneath it. If I was going to forcefully send it away, it'd be this. If I was caused to be sent away, it would be this. Passively, okay? If I was going to say that I would send away, what letter would I put on the front of shalak? I will.
If that.
An aleph.
Oh.
And it'd be called eshlach. Okay. If you're going to send it away, what letter do I put on the front of it?
Yo.
That's he. He sent.
Oh.
Say you, tav, tishlach. I say we are going to send it away. We will send away. What letter?
Noon.
Noon, which will be nishlach. You see? So you already know what the action is. You're just adding pieces to your puzzle. That's all. So this is a piece. Okay? If there was nothing here and I just had this underneath it, you would know that's a simple action. And I know that that's active. If it wasn't active, I would say, okay, well, let's make it passive. I put this in front of it. If I knew it was in the past tense, I sent something away, I would go ahead and put right here a T. If we sent it away, it would be a new. Shalaknu. How did I send it away? Did I send it away forcefully or did I just simply send it away?
Simply
Simple.
How do you know it's simple?
The symbol.
There you go. The identifying sign tells you that because it's under the first letter right here of the root of the verb of the pa'al. Okay. If I forcefully sent it away, I'm going to have this dot under the first letter. Question for you. Is this in the past, present, or future?
Past.
It's in the past. It's actually in the past because I have a letter added to the end of it, but also too, there's nothing in front of it. There's nothing here. If it was something there, if I said this, and I had nish laku or lish laknu, is it still in the past, present, or future?
Future.
It's in the past.
Oh,
Tell me why.
because then at the end.
Yes, because that right there told me that it was something in the past. Because I know the combination. I got the same shalak, but now I got a noon in front of it without nothing here on the end. Now, is that a nifal or is that we?
Yes.
That's we. We will send. Okay. Just those little nuances like that. Okay. But you're getting it now. You're starting to understand. It's just a matter of placement. Okay. That's all it is a matter of placement. It's a matter of you knowing what your little marks are. You're identifying. That's why they keep telling you what are the identifying marks. Is it under the first letter or is it added to the front? You know, is it on the end of the letter? What is it? Where is it at? So if you know your pa'al form and you know your root and you know your action, anything that you put on the front or the back of it, you would already know what it is. You would already know how to interpret it. What I got up there right now, what did I just say?
I sent.
Thank you. Past, present, or future?
Past.
Thank you. Okay, shalom. Simple. What did I just say?
Um,
This is a hith. Off the top, when you hear hith, that is doing an action on oneself. I what? I sent myself. That's how simple it is. Okay. I'm sorry that I keep pushing your brains to the next level, but it's good. You have to force yourself. Okay. You really do. You have to force yourself. Number 3, in the future tense, we just learned that you can also tell at a glance which group the verb is in by looking at one letter of the verb. Which letter?
First.
Yeah. Okay. It's the first letter to let you know that's outside of your root. You'll know. Okay. And of course, I'm going to send you the answers. Let me see. Okay, how, verse number 4, how by looking at this letter will we know which group the verb is in? How would you know by looking at this letter? How would you know? Is it by the number of letters or is it by the number of dots? What is it?
Number of dots.
The number of dots. Okay. So you guys already know this. It's easy stuff. Okay. So this is pretty much prepping you for what you're about to go into. That's why I was driving you a little bit harder today, because I want you to be prepared for lesson number 10. Okay. So this is just like an intro to, you know, what it's going to be. So they kind of set you up and let you know, oh, it's going to be based upon dots. And it's future tense, and it's about future tense letters 1.1, 2, 3, and 4. So kind of study that this week. You know, spend maybe about 5 to 10 minutes on it a day if you can. And before you know it, you'll be ready for lesson number 10. And 10 through, I think 10 through 12, you're going to love it. You're just going to be like, oh, this is nothing. And then you're really going to get into it. You're going to really get excited about what you're learning. All right. But I thought it was necessary for me to show you the understanding about what a pa'al is, because they don't tell you that, but I think I missed that. It took me a long time to figure out some different things, but if you learn the pa'al and you understand that the pa'al is a verb, which they don't tell you, then you're gonna be like, okay, I know what this is. This is a verb, but it is a pa'al, and it doesn't matter what those letters are, just as long as there are 3 of them. Okay, they could be an aleph, a kaf, and a lamed. It could be a shin, and mem, and a resh. It could be a shin, and a mem, and an ayin. It could be any of those. It's still in the pa'al. The moment I put those identifying signs underneath it, I'm changing the way that it's being spoken and how it's supposed to be understood. So I'm changing the tense. Okay, I'm going, you know, I'm going from the mood. I'm going from something that's simple. I'm going to something that's forceful. I can see now by the identifying sign that this is causative. So this changes everything. Okay, and it really shapes what's being said, and properly. All right. Any questions? Thank you guys for coming to class tonight. I'll send you a copy of this as soon as I can.
Toda.
Bye, everyone.